But anyway, so this was our boat, the American Queen, and just a brief little history about it. Great steam-powered paddle wheel riverboats have plied the rivers of the United States for 200 years. The Grand American Queen was constructed in 1995 in Morgan City, Louisiana, and it carries on the tradition of the elegant 19th century steamboat travel. It's a stern wheel that is driven by 4 cylinders, horizontally inclined, tandem piston, steeple compounded, double acting, reciprocating steam engine. So there are 4 steam cylinders that go this way. And one goes out and then it comes back. And they are working at opposite ends, and we saw that happen on the, can you go back easy? So this goes back. There you go. It's called a stern paddle. And the engine from the American Queen came from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers dredge called the Kennedy. It was decommissioned, and in June of 1992, they were doing a survey of old equipment and came across this engine and decided it would serve the purpose for powering the American Queen. So in September of 1994, the American Queen went into service. There's 28,000 pounds per hour of live steam at 300 pounds per square inch. That's generated by the combustion of number 2 marine fuel in a single Babcock and Wilcox. Okay, so that was our boat. Cheryl, if you can go back for just a sec. Those 2 smokestacks would actually, there were several bridges that we went under that were too low, so those would lay down, and we watched that several times. And we got it. I truly don't remember how this trip came about other than chit-chatting and, oh yeah, that would be fun to do, and let's look into it. And okay, here we go. So we found this particular trip, and we wanted to start in Memphis for me, because I have never seen a firefly. And I still have not seen a firefly. But I have been to Graceland now, and I walked where others walk. Rob and I were the only 2 that did that. These guys just went out on their own. The day we were in Memphis, we did see the famous Peabody ducks at the Peabody Hotel. If you're not familiar with that story, just briefly, some duck hunters back in the day, and they would have live ducks as decoys. And the duck hunters had a little too much Tennessee whiskey, and they wanted their ducks in their trucks, so they brought them in and put them in the fountain. And next morning, the ducks were still in the fountain, and there happened to be a bellman who had been a Barnum and Bailey ringling animal trainer, and he said, I can train these ducks. So they have a duck parade twice a day that the ducks come, they get in the elevator and they come down and they march and get in the fountain, they spin, they ride around the water, and then they go at 5 o'clock, the guy comes out and taps his cane and blows his whistle, and they march back in, get in their elevator and ride back up to it. So that was how we started. After we did all our COVID testing, we stood in line for a long time. But the trip down the Mississippi from Memphis to New Orleans is 640 miles. And we should have made a slide of this, but it is, I had no idea that the Mississippi was so loopy-curvy, loopy. And they told us that part of that, it would make a loop like 1 year, and then the next year it would cut that off And so it would leave what they call an oxbow lake. So those things are all over the place where it has changed course. The boat itself held 436 passengers, and it was christened in 1995 with a 2-foot tall bottle of Tabasco sauce. And it is said to be the largest river steamboat ever built. Before sailing, we had to participate in a muster station drill. Our life jackets were in our cabins in the closet, and we had to put those on while they walked by to make sure that we all could buckle in and that kind of stuff. Our cabins were small, but they were comfortable, and we were on the deck, so we had a couple chairs and we could just sit out there. There were 6 decks where you could wander, relax, or watch the interesting views and activities happening on the Mississippi River. And this was the Bell on one end. And the guys then were overseeing the barges, transporting all manner of goods up and down the river. And that was kind of a favorite pastime, just to watch. And the closer we got to New Orleans, the busier it got. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner were included in the fare. And John already told you, when in the dining room, you could have lobster every night, or on the front porch, you could have fried milk every night. Pretty sweet deal. And they also had ice cream 24 hours a day, soft serve ice cream. Unfortunately, it did break 2 days before we docked, but they did bring in ice cream and served it up. The trip was organized so the passengers could go on a choice of several excursions at each port. A hop-on, hop-off bus system allowed for ease and convenience to see the sights. We saw beautiful southern mansions, museums, Civil War sites, and lots of southern history. And the magnolias were amazing. And also premium excursions were available at each stop. And we would like to tell you a little more about one of our final premium excursion together, and that was the day at the Louisiana State Penitentiary.
Victor Cheryl found a devotion that kind of fit in with the State Penitentiary thing. So I'll read this devotion and get my act together here, and then Vic will get up here. He'll explain a few things. This is not an October vacation for us, but that's the devotion. So, during an October vacation, the nutted battle with chronic pain forced me to spend a few days recovering in our room. My mood became as overcast as the sky. When I finally ventured out to enjoy sightseeing at the nearby lighthouse with my husband, gray clouds blocked much of our view. Still, I snapped a few photos of the snowy mountain, shadowy mountains, and dull horizon. Later, disappointed because of the downpour coming in for the night, I skimmed through the digital pictures. Gasping, I handed my husband the camera. A rainbow focused on the gloominess. On gloominess, earlier I missed out on God refreshing my weary spirit with the unexpected glimpse of hope. Physical or emotional suffering can drag us down into the depths of despair. Desperate for refreshment, we thirst for reminders of God's constant presence and infinite power. As we recall the countless times God has come through for us and for others in the past, we can trust our hope is secured in Him, no matter how downcast we feel in the moment. When bad attitudes or difficult circumstances dim our vision, God invites us to call on Him. Read the Bible, trust in His faithfulness. As we seek God, we can rely on Him to help us spot rainbows of hope arched toward the darker sky.
Deb pointed out, we have terrific things to take tours of the mansions, of the museums and that. And they would take you on excursions to your choice. This was getting towards the end of the trip, and we had seen some beautiful, beautiful museums and that. And we had an opportunity, it said in the brochure, to go visit a prison, talk to the inmates. I was a little cautious about that one. I've always been a little cautious about it, and even in some of my training that I've had here, I've thought about what do you do in a prison for faith and that. So I've never been involved with that. This was a trip, just this one day, for some of us, maybe all of us that were on the trip. We thought about many times. And so it is a heavier tour than you would normally see. But it's important for us to talk about it. As Rob read this devotion, I want you to look as we start going through the prison here. I want you to think about if you can see hope. Okay? Thinking back even to where our Bible, Corinthians, talks about love. I want you to maybe think about three things that are found in that. Love, hope, and faith. And can they be found in this prison? Well, the Louisiana State Penitentiary is known as Angola, and it was named Alcatraz of the South. Some of you have had an opportunity to tour Alcatraz. The same conditions were found in the South. And to this day, this is the largest maximum security prison in the United States. It was named because it was a plantation, and the whole thing is a plantation, taken care of. And the name came from a country, Angola, because it was found that the slaves that worked this plantation, the farmland that the prison is on, were taken from Angola. So it became the city, Angola, and it was definitely a city. Well, we arrived at the prison on a bus, and immediately the guards came out and they checked everything underneath the bus. They came on. I was surprised we didn't have to go through security, but they did count how many heads were on the bus, and every time we got off, they counted how many heads we had off. Angola was described as the bloodiest and most violent prison in the United States. In 1952, it was challenged by the inmates that were there because nobody knew what was happening inside the prison. And in 1952, 31 inmates cut their heelish tendon. And when they did that, that brought it to everybody's attention. And the Post and the radio stations and whatever found out what was happening in that prison. And today, it is still houses 6,300 to 7,000 prisoners. 1,800 staff members are there in order to take care of everything that happens. The inmates live in separate complexes on 18,000 acres. 18,000 acres of a truly working prisoner farm. There are cell blocks, as you'll see in a little bit, and there are what they call dormitory rooms. And they pointed out that there was 5 of these little rooms, not little, they were large dormitories, but they could earn the right to be able to move to those prisons where they were in dorms. and each one had a bed. Okay? All of them together, not locked up at that time. They're called camps, and that's a carryover from the slave days that were there. And it was pointed out that maybe some of the inmates that are working there now, maybe their grandmothers, grandfathers, or whatever, were there as slaves working that same ground. To receive a sentence to Angola was a terrible thing, and the prisoners knew that. And still today, all life inmates are still sent to the Louisiana State Prison. There are few options because the Louisiana law, if you are sentenced to this prison for life, you have no chance of getting out. There are no options. Life means life in Louisiana. 90% of the inmates that are there end up dying in Angola. It's not uncommon for them to be alone as well there, because maybe they don't have a family, or the family that they did have when they went in won't support them anymore, and they end up being alone there their entire time. Having lost the meaning of contact with the family and the outside world, and being locked up, knowing it was for a lifetime, many of them resorted to losing hope. Remember what Rob said about hope? They lost hope. It was quickly apparent that this location of this prison, as I pointed out, covers 18,000 acres, or translated to 28 square miles. It's surrounded, as Deb pointed out, by three sides. The Mississippi River goes all the way around the prison. And if it's not there, there's just swamp. This is one of the alligators that were swimming around as we were going from one area to the next. And they said that in the swamp had alligators, water moccasins, etc. And it was really effective at the inmates thinking twice about trying to escape. They took us to the Red Hat House. And it was named the Red Hat because this is the place where the inmates that were on death row were contained. Everybody in there had a red hat because of the straw hat, and they painted them red. So wherever they went out on detail or whatever, they knew who it was and where that one did belong. In the Red Hat, there was 30 cells that were found in this, and it was built in 1933. And by the way, this is on the historical records and will never be taken away. It's part of the tour inside the prison. So this was built in 1933, and it was for the inmates that were on death row. And one of the comments that was read in a magazine in that I found, one of the inmates that had been there talked about it being like a dragon dungeon with rats crawling in it and all other creatures. And believe it or not, they told about how they fed the inmates there, and it was in a bucket, in a pail, and they would throw it into the cells, and they would take the food from the floor. The Red Hat cells, they explained that in that little room there, they could have between 8 to 10 prisoners in that space right there. You can see that I was able to touch from wall to wall. It's about 10 feet deep, and it has a bump or a bed over on the side made out of concrete. And can you imagine 8 to 10 individuals living in there? It isn't any wonder that they were losing hope. The Red Hat, though, was officially closed in 1972. Next door to the Red Hat, connected right with it, was a building the same size, and I'm here to tell you that this was the execution room. The execution room. As their time came near, they were brought in, and they were set in the electric chair. As I looked around it and everything, somebody asked, "Do you want me to take a picture of it?" And the first thing I checked to see if it was plugged in or not. That is a replica there. The real one is up in the museum. Now they have done away with the electric chair, but they are still put down by some other means. At this time, there are still 81 inmates on death row.
Angola is not a nice place. You can tell by the fences. I mean, there's razor wire, it's electrified, and at night, there are dogs that patrol that little space between the fences. And these aren't just any dog. Vic will talk about some really nice dogs later on. These are not nice dogs. They are a hybrid wolf dog, and they're worthless for tracking, but they're really good at doing their job between those two fences. We went by where the inmates, and these are inmates that have earned the right to be the dog's master. And their housing and kennels for the dogs are separate from everywhere else. They bring the dogs, and we let them out about 6:30 at night, and about 7:30 in the evening, or in the morning, they come and get them and take them back to their kennel. We've got every little bit there was a story of some prisoner, some inmate, and for those of you who saw the movie Dead Man Walking, it came from this prison. We've got a short video, lasts about 13 minutes, that explains a little bit about what has happened, the warden that changed the prison to what it is to now from what it was.
State Penitentiary in Angola is one of America's most unusual prisons because it is in some ways a plantation. Once you pass through Angola's front gate, you can't help but feel that you've gone back in time to another South. It's the largest maximum security prison in the country right now. There are 6,300 prisoners. The majority of murderers, you have rapists, you have people who committed assault, drug felonies. How long are you here for? Next 40 years? What was the charge? 4 counts? Roughly 75% of the prisoners are here serving life sentences without the possibility of parole. Louisiana has some of the toughest sentencing laws in the country, and these guys are not going home. For most of its history, Angola has been a fearsome place, but in recent years it's become relatively docile. People credit the warden, Earl Kane, who's this very unlikely character, of devising a way to get Angola under control.
I'm Earl Kane. I'm the warden of Louisiana State Penitentiary. I've been the warden here about 2.5 years.
When you got this job, What did you find when you came up here?
There was blood, there was stabbing, there was fighting, and it was totally out of control. It was every man for himself. I realized pretty quick in my career that moral people don't rape, pilfer, and steal. Moral people aren't criminals. And so the best thing I could do real quickly was to get this place as moral as I could, and it would curb the violence.
How do you impose morality on a population that is 3/4 murderers serving life sentences without the possibility of parole?
Well, the basic thing was they were hopeless. It was hopelessness. With the life sentence, there's no hope. You're going to ever get out. And so the moral rehabilitation caused the hope. To learn to work is basic rehabilitation. Many of them never worked in their life. They just stole it. The guy that's driving a $250,000 combine is an inmate making 20 cents an hour. That's meaningful work for them.
What's it like the first day when the prison comes to you and says, okay, now you're working on the farm?
Well, then when I first came here, I see the kind of type of work here, I figured like this, I said, that work not gonna be bad, you know. I love doing all work.
You think these guys, young guys like to work? They like to
No,
work?
I don't like to work it out.
Before the Civil War, Angola was a plantation. Today, there's a reasonable chance that some of the men working this farm are descendants of the slaves who once picked cotton here. Once a prison doctor clears an inmate for work, that prisoner's got a job, whether he likes it or not. Some of the prisoners get paid as little as 2 cents an hour. How you doing? Good to see you. How are you?
Got locked up July 25th, 1981.
What was the charge?
2nd-degree murder.
Did you do it? No? No. But you're here.
Yeah.
Are you free to just go around the
Old penitentiary, being said.
So you've been here for more than 3 decades. How has Angola changed since you got here?
Oh, man, it done changed so much. It's just like from day to night, you know?
Louisiana's harsh sentencing laws mean that most prisoners are here for life, which means that Brocane had to devise a new system to keep prisoners on the straight and narrow.
One of the ways he did this was to Christianize the prison. There are churches everywhere, services are run every day. Hundreds of inmates are now trained as ministers. One of the Christian groups in Angola is called Malachi Dads. These are a group of inmates, Christian inmates, who are training other inmates on how to be fathers to their children who are outside the prison.
My name is Ron Hickson. I've been incarcerated for 25 years. I'm serving life sentence for second-degree murder.
My name is Darryl Waters. I'm from Gibson, Louisiana. I was sentenced to second-degree murder in 1992.
My name is George Gillum. I'm from Waters. I'm currently serving a life sentence for second-degree murder. We discovered in 2006 that a child of an incarcerated father had a 70% likelihood to come to prison. And so we discovered those statistics, and God gave us favor, and that became Malachi Dads. Just because you're locked up in prison, that does not give you the right to not still be a father. Healthy people who have a heart that's healed, who have a soul that's whole, they want to help, they want to give back, and that's what we do every day.
Why do you think violence has come down in Angola?
When Warren came on the scene, what he did was open up the door of opportunities. He was able to see, if I can get these guys to start coming after success, because with success do it change the way you think. If I can achieve something, I feel better about myself.
The spread of Christianity inside the prison has brought down the violence rate to a huge degree. But it's also a troubling issue. I mean, what if you're a member of another religion? What if you don't want religion? Can you survive and flourish in the system that Brocane's created?
It's not about religion to get you to go to God right immediately and all that kind of thing. It's not that. It's about changing yourself inside so you're a different human being. The inmates are going to congregate in a group. It can be positive or negative. But I want to create a group they can belong to that's going to be positive, that I have some semblance of control of from a distance. We have now a different kind of gang for God. And it can be any religion. We don't care.
What do you say to people who say that you're using religion as a form of social control?
I'm not using religion, except all I want is the morality in religion, and I can get morality quicker out of religion than I can anywhere else. All I'm seeking is moral rehabilitation.
I've gotten to know some of the Malachi dads pretty well, and I would say this: you would never know that these were murderers.
I got involved with a conflict with a guy, and I have to live with that mistake that I made in my life when I was 19 years old. 2 young lives, both destroyed because of immaturity.
If you were to get out, A, are you equipped for the outside world? And B, do you think you would ever hurt anyone again?
That man or that personality is dead and gone. That person don't even exist anymore in this world. There was a moment in time that something happened and I reacted in an immature way.
What God is redeeming, and this country is founded upon the redemptive process. That life that once took a life can save hundreds of lives.
Earl Kane faced a difficult situation in the 1990s. Federal government cut prisoner education funds, so he needed to do something with these prisoners. He brought in a seminary, and he also started what has turned out to be one of Louisiana's largest vocational institutes. We're in the automotive tech shop where they train a lot of the reentry inmates. These are guys who are going to get out in 5 or 10 years, where they train them in mechanics.
My name is John Sheehan. I've been over at the Automotive Technology School since June 2011.
And you're an ASC certified?
I'm a Master ASC certified technician.
You do supervise the whole operation?
I supervise the whole operation. These men that are sitting here at the table and working on this car, they are going home. And if I can help change their lives to where they're going to be a father, they're going to be a husband, they're going to be a better son to their mother, then I'm giving back to society. And I feel good about that.
And I should point out, because people don't automatically assume this, that you're not a state employee.
No, sir, I'm not a state employee. I forgot to tell you that. I'm going on 29 years come November of a life sentence inside Louisiana State Penitentiary.
You've been here for 29 years?
Been here for 29 years.
And you're in for what crime?
I'm in for second-degree murder.
Second-degree murder.
First offender.
Lifetime without the possibility
Life
of parole.
without probation, or parole.
Lifetime parole. And who did you kill? Who was the murderer?
My wife.
That was your wife.
My first wife.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've been through a process of redemption?
There's nothing I can ever do to go back and change what happened where I wish I could, but by changing my life to the better is to help these young men to change their lives. We probably have about $300,000 or better worth of equipment and tools inside of this shop right here.
And so, I mean, the interesting thing here to me, as an outsider, is the idea that maximum security prison has not only a ball peen hammer, not only these tools accessible, but prisoners are also in charge of monitoring the tool. I have to think that's an unusual situation. There's something so odd and infuriating about a system in which proper vocational education and mentoring and life skills education and anger management education and substance abuse and mental health, where all of this is done after they've committed violent crimes or after they've committed felonies. And I think one of the things that just strikes you in a place like this, more than almost anything else, is that we have everything reversed.
You've been a criminal, but you get old enough and you get wise enough that it's really not what you're about anymore. We had to have a victim to send them here and get them prepared to go back out into society and be successful. God help us. Somebody's got to be hurt, murdered, killed before we'll recognize the problem we have and go back and fix it. But in corrections, we didn't do it for so long because we all believed that we were just supposed to lock them up. We forgot corrections means correct deviant behavior.
There's a hypocrisy in the way we talk about these problems in America. We tend to focus on what do the police do wrong, what are the prisons doing wrong. But the prisons and the police are doing what we and our legislators want them to do. Angola is just the receiving end of the problem. Angola is so bucolic that sometimes you can forget that this is a maximum security prison where Earl Cain uses solitary confinement as a form of control and punishment. And of course you can forget that this is the home of Louisiana's death row. Earl Cain supervises death row just the way he supervises everything else in this prison.
After we had the last meal with Gerald Bartlon, the last person executed, he wanted a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So he wanted just peanut butter, cream, and he wanted apple jelly. So we bought him what he wanted, and we had the last meal with him. But anyway, I picked the jelly up and the peanut butter, and here it is.
Yeah?
Sure. He and I both ate 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches each. And we said the blessing over the meal. He was a Christian guy, but he wanted to be executed because he had done a horrendous, horrible crime. And he said if he got away from me, he was going to do it again. But he was adamant. It was almost like suicide. This business is very, very complex, and to maintain your own sanity, you have to navigate through both sides of it and just keep the keys and carry out the law and just truck it on.
We've gone through a long period in America where it's all about punishment and it's all about mandatory life. But if you come here, you actually meet these people and you realize, or you at least have the inkling of a feeling that maybe there's something to the idea that the people they were when they killed other people, those people are gone, and that something new is taking root. When you look at the problem of mandatory sentencing, not through the eyes of defense attorneys or liberal prison reformers, but from the warden of Louisiana State Penitentiary, and he says this system is absurd, you really begin to see the maddening aspect of this problem.
You can see from there that as we turn into a Christian penitentiary. Now, I went back and looked at some of the characteristics of this. I found out that when he decided that the thing he had to change was morals, okay, which to us would mean we have to think about our heart, our mind, and our souls. He contacted a Baptist minister, and the Baptist minister helped write a seminary program. And the inmates, once they prove their good behavior, are allowed to then attend the seminary. The inmates are then ministers. They said there are 6 different churches now on the plantation. There is not an outside minister at all. They are all run by the inmates that have gone through the seminary program. It's important to note, though, before they are able to get to these programs, they have to be locked up for 10 years and prove themselves safe for their next trip out to one of these courses. Talk about the inmate ministers for just a little bit here. They're now found throughout the prison. They lead the church services. They work with hospice, with those that are in the hospice program. They visit those that are on death row. They also keep in contact with the families of the inmates as well. And any notifications of those that have passed on, they take care of the notification of the family or the inmates there as well. The prisoners there have learned how to tie back to the community. Their relationship with the community outside as well as the community inside. And through their churches, you've heard through the video there that some of them earn 2 cents an hour, some 20 cents an hour. But as they collect those, they also tithe a certain amount back to it to help support the prison and the inmates. And if you notice there, they weren't all in orange uniforms there. Once they made it out into these programs, whether they learned about agriculture, auto mechanics, or whatever the case might be, they were able to wear civilian clothes. And so some of the money that is earned from the churches and that was tithe goes to those that are poor economical status, if there can be one when you're making 2 cents an hour. And they buy such things as clothing for the inmates, and they have an opportunity to buy it. The Angola churches gives them the first opportunity in their lives to deal with their past on what they were sent there for, and not be destroyed by it, which was the case before this warden started this program. That isn't to mean that everybody there is of good behavior. You saw the lockup center there. And there are those inmates that are still there. They're locked up for 23 hours, let out for 1 hour a day. The farm, as it is called, is set up to give back to others. When they harvest the crops, they use the money, or not the money, they use the crops to feed the inmates that are there. And they said that through the program of agriculture and that they've been able to feed the inmates there for $1.60 a day, because they are basically self-contained. They also reach out. Again, I use the word reach out to serve somebody. They freeze some of this that is harvested, and it is shipped out to feed 5 to 6 other satellite prisons that are around. They also raise cattle. It looked like a cattle ranch as you drove around. They're just roaming out there. Grade A cattle, grade A meat, but they have to sell it. And they sell it because there was a protest by all the communities around that the inmates were eating better meat than they could afford on the table. So they sold the cattle, bought back less. You see here, they also have a horse program there as well. And these are Bergeron horses, huge black critters, and they're as tame as dogs, not the dogs that Rob was talking about. This is a close-up of one of them, and you can see that the face of the inmate is covered. They asked us that we could take all the pictures we wanted, but please do not take any pictures of their face. The gentleman that is there told us that he's been there for 28 years. He says he's a murderer. He shot the gentleman that had relationships with his wife. He's there for life, and he said, I couldn't be happier. Look what I'm working with. Are you starting to see a little hope in some of this? These horses also, black and huge, are used to pull a hearse, a black hearse, built by the inmates themselves in the wood shop, with glass on the side of it. And when an inmate passes away, there's a processional. These huge horses, black horses, are hooked up to this hearse. And then, if there is family available, they will walk behind the hearse to the cemetery. And the cemeteries are marked. And this is a big change from what has happened before, because the inmates were, when they passed on, were carried in cardboard boxes. There was a hole dug out in the pasture. They were buried. They were not marked. Now, they have some type of dignity in the way they are treated. The inmates The ministerial inmates take care of the entire process and do the service at the gravesite. And as I said, all of them are marked at this time.
So if you have horses and you have cattle, you have to have a rodeo. And Angola has the oldest and largest prison rodeo in the United States. It began, I read two different versions, 1964 and 1965. Before that, the prisoners and the staff, they'd back up pickup trucks and they'd have a little rodeo, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew. And today, they have one weekend in April and every Sunday in October. They have built an arena that houses 10,000 people, and it is sold out every show. They raise around $450,000 a day, and that money goes back into the system. It helps pay for the seminary classes, funerals, educational programs, and the maintenance of the chapels. Some of the events that they have are quite interesting. First, they have the grand entry, which was typical of what we would see here with the flags and things. Then they have the bust out, which they open all 6 chutes with riders on bulls, and the last man to remain on the bull is the winner. They have bareback riding, a wild horse race where they have to capture a wild horse, and let's see. Riders are, let me read that. 6 untrained horses are simultaneously released into the arena with short ropes dragging behind them. 3-man teams attempt to grab the ropes and hold the horse long enough for a team member to mount. The first team to cross the finish line while still on top of the horse is the winner. They do bring in barrel racers, women barrel racers that are competing professionally. That's part of the barrel race circuit. They do bulldogging, buddy pickup. This event requires one man on a horse riding bareback to navigate the length of the arena, pick up another inmate who is standing on a barrel, and race back to the finish line. Wild cow milking, where they have teams and they're milking the cow, and they have to have enough in their hand and run across and show the judges to be the winner. Bull riding. They do have to ride 6 seconds, and they have to compete in the bull riding competition to compete for the all-around cowboy title. And it is sanctioned, or not sanctioned, but it's run by a professional bull riding association. And they do have to wear protective covering or clothing. The cowboys, the inmate cowboys, all wear black and white striped shirts. And if you Google it, you can watch some of the movies. It's pretty interesting. Convict poker. 4 inmates sit at a table in the middle of the arena playing a game of poker. A bull is released with the sole purpose of unseating the poker players. The last man remaining seated is the winner. And finally, there's Guts and Glory, where they tape, or I don't know how they get the poker chip on a bull, on a Brahma bull, or I don't know that it's a Brahma, but yeah, Brahma bull, on its head, on its forehead, and then turn it loose, and then they are all out there running, and whoever gets the poker chip is the winner of the Guts and Glory. So it's, and yes, people are injured, but it gives the inmates something to look forward to. They also, in conjunction with that, have a craft fair where the inmates who have done paintings and the woodworking, and there's a mixed one. This was in the museum, that picture. But here's some of the woodworking. And they sell these products, and they have individual accounts that they can put their money into, and then they can buy things at the commissary, like ice cream and that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty big deal. And they were sad that it was on hiatus during COVID, but they held the April one, and now we're looking forward to October.
The final stop of the tour, we were brought to one of the churches. And in there, as you walked in, you saw 6 inmates up on the stage with dogs sitting beside them. They introduced themselves, told who they were, they told what they were there for, and you can guess by now what they were there for. They were there for murder, and they were there for life. But this is known as the pause program. And the inmates that are earned the right to be able to be a part of this truly do give back to the outside. Because the pause program helps the veterans. The pause program stands for Prisoners Assisting Warriors Service. These dogs are trained by the trainers, and they're with they are with the trainer for 24 hours a day. It takes approximately 18 to 24 months to be able to train these dogs. These dogs are trained to work from the right side, to work to the left side, because they don't have any idea who the veteran is going to be to receive the dog. So after their basic training has taken place, and I think they said they had about 17 different kind of things they train them, they gave us a demonstration of what one of these dogs might do. And they had the inmate sit down in a chair, and the inmate would start rocking back and forth, doing their feet and everything, and feel the anxiety. And the dog would actually go over, we saw it, stand right in front of that and bark and put his hand right on the knee of the prisoner. Took him out of whatever state may have been in. So they are trained to maybe be able to get a cane. They are trained to watch for bad dreams at night, to be able to wake the veteran up. And I asked him, I said, well, where do the dogs go at night? And he said, they're at the bottom of my bed in the unit, okay? They're in a kennel in there, and they are with that trainer for 18 to 24 months. And then we asked the question, what happens when this dog goes off to a veteran? They said, a new dog will be brought in. And there is another prison as well that is rescue dogs. And those dogs are then sent over what need be for training to the Louisiana State Prison. So Angola is definitely giving back. Now, how they select the veteran that receives the dog, I don't know. And I couldn't find how the selection process took place. But they did say that when the veteran was brought in and he took a step towards the dog, and the dog showed any signs of maybe stepping backwards or freezing or anything like that, that dog was not the right dog for the veteran. If they walked in and the veteran stood there and the dog started wagging his tail and walking up to the person, that was the one that was going to be trained with it. This dog walked right up to me and I said, am I going home? The dogs were tremendous. Their veterans received the dog. In conclusion, I read an article that was sent out by one of the religious inmates there, and he talked about the aspects of the program, and he said that he was one of the ministers, and he said that he gets great feeling from seeing the rehabilitation of the inmates. He said they go from taking to giving, okay? Religious conversions for some inmates don't take. And they have to deal with their own past, future. The minister pointed out, he said, how we keep inmates, how we help inmates is we enter into their suffering with them. And we help them come to a point he called freedom. Freedom, where they could start leaving the past behind. He described it as what was in the movie. That person that came into that prison, he says, is now dead. He said, yesterday I was dead, today I am alive and I serve. Until you realize that, he said, until you realize that you have sinned against the law of love, all you will produce is just a prisoner of war. He said, when you become a son of God, you become human again. And he said, that's my job. He said, we learn to make the right choices, and we learn how to do and how to choose the right to do the right thing at the right time. And that is found through love. He said, love works. He said, I wouldn't have said that when I came in. He said, love works. That's my job. We saw that there was a rainbow of hope, as Rob described it here. And as we drove out through the gates, they lifted up the bus again underneath to check for anything. They came and counted each one of us. And they took us back to that boat that we were on. But we all had a different feeling about the experience that we went through. It was life-altering, you might say. Seeing men receiving hope, saying they did have hope, even though they were in there for life. Hope, yes. They found when they were there, they found it, and I will say it this way, that Jesus walks in that prison today. And it is a model prison for the other prisons in the United States to be looking at. I hope that you found life-changing hope by some of the gentlemen in this. And we are so fortunate that we have hope, faith, and love. Please listen to the music.
Seems like all I could see was the struggle. Heart So I'll shake off these heavy chains and wipe away every stain. 'Cause I'm not who I used to be. I am redeemed. You set me free. So I'll shake off these heavy chains and wipe away every stain. Yeah, I'm not who I used to be. Oh God, I'm not who I used to be. Jesus, I'm not who I used to be. 'Cause I am redeemed. Thank God, redeemed.
There was 600 and some miles to this trip, and some of you may have come in and inspected and see everything on that trip. We encourage you to talk to all of us and find out really about some of the plantations and everything, but we felt passionate that we wanted to show you a dynamic change, and that was the day we visited the prison. So I welcome all of you to partake in our meal that John and Tim and the flock committee have provided for us.
Let's all say a quick prayer. Lord, what can I say other than thank you? Thank you for everything that you give to each and every one of us, even to those who don't think they're worthy or have sinned. But all we need to do is know that you are with us. You walk with us through everything that we go through. If we ask for your help and your forgiveness, you are always there. Lord, please bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies, the hands that prepared it, and please be with each and every one of us as we travel home, and please let it be safely. I ask that we have great fellowship, and remember that there is hope, and let us all be willing and to help pass it along. In your name I pray, amen.